taking the time to join into this live stream, this podcast that we do every Sunday night, Sunday at Mike's, 11 p.m. Central European Time. We're doing it here live from Amsterdam. It's so good to be here. So glad to have so many people always joining in on the conversation here. Feel free to do so down in the chat. Love to hear what you have to say about tonight's subject. Um, and also, I always get started by saying two things now. First thing is time is a valuable thing, and spending a little bit of yours with me is always greatly appreciated. So, first, I want to say thank you so much for that. Second thing is, if you really want to support this channel, don't forget to hit the link below in the comment section. I'll put it there. It's going to be a link to the Bandcamp page that we have here that we sell our merchandise on. Please take time to take a look at that. Support this channel. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Mr. Watson in the house, Mr. Allmark in the house, Cat's Music Journey in the house. Cheers to you all. Hello, everybody. Mr. Bogfoot, good to see you, sir. How is everybody doing this fine Sunday evening? Tough week last week. Tough week, but it's all right. We're here. So let us, somebody said, thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate that. Everybody hit that link there that Scott was so kind to always put up. If you want to support this channel, Mr. Buter in the house. Hey, how are you doing, sir? Yeah, somebody said in the chat last time, I come here because I want to get away from the things that are going on in the world. And I thought that was such a beautiful statement. I really, really, really dug that statement. I've been thinking about that. You guys say things. I mean, I think one of the reasons I really do like coming here and doing this with you guys is that the things I get from you is just pure gold, and that was one of them. So let's do that. Let's, as Prince said, take a break from 9 to 5. Get away from the sorrows that surround us and talk about guitars and the sorrows that surround those. see, I fooled you. I did the old switcheroo. Good to see everybody. You know, I aspire to shortly have Fern finish up my affinity. I started doing a little research about them again because I want to do, when it does come around, I'd like to, of course, do a regular content video for it, talking about it. And one of the interesting things that I looked at was the fact that people recognize those early 2000 ones, the ones around 2000 to around 2003, as being something a little bit different. And I wondered to myself, well, is this just hyperbole, as it usually is? Sometimes it gets that way in our little circle of friends here, guitarists, or is there really something to it? And I find it interesting. I did an ABC test, if you guys remember one of my old videos, where you can go back and I took a Squire Affinity pickups, ceramic pickups, basically, and I put it against Alnico 2 pickups and Alnico 3 pickups or something like this, just to see if you guys could tell the difference. And it didn't go over as I thought, because to a man, automatically everybody was like sees A is the ceramics. A is the ceramics. You guys remember that? So it can't be, ceramic pickups, they put 500K pots on those Squire pickups because they're ceramic pickups, they're dark pickups. So they're going to put, really, 500Ks on those to brighten them up a little bit. And I just wonder to myself, what it is about that guitar. Maybe you guys have heard some things about them. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on those Squires, amongst other things tonight. I'm having the pickup swapped out. Like I said, I was good, timing. Talk about timing. Fern had a set of Mexican strap pickups. which I don't believe those are ceramic. No, he said those aren't ceramic, but so that would be newer Mexican Strat pickups. But because I wasn't, in particularly in love with the pickups that guitar came with, so that would be, you know, something that I really wonder why it's not the pickups. Is it the wood? But it's the sum of the parts, as I always say. Very interesting thought. I thought I'd start off with tonight. Was it the Alnico 5 that was ceramic? Alnico 5 pickups, um, it has an Alnico magnet in it. Ceramic is ceramic magnet. So, like I said, in order to get the tone that you would get from an Alnico pickup, like a 5 or something like that, they boost up, the pots to 500K. Sometimes I've seen guys go 750 on those. And so there's that. It's just an interesting thing. And another thing that I kind of took away from the live stream last time, was when I was researching about, vintage guitars. Do we remember them, like member berries kind of thing, or was there really something to them? And we went through that. We talked about that. Anthony Thornhill in the house. How are you doing, sir? Good to have you here as always. Man, everybody is here tonight. Boy, I feel blessed. Thank you, guys. Just take 5 seconds, just say thank you. So glad everybody's here in the chat tonight. Good to see everybody here. And one of the things that I took away from that I was thinking about, I said, let me see if I can write something around that. Because again, the writing process, one thing leads to one thought, leads to another thought. And so this thought tonight actually is part two, I guess, if you could say, of the last live stream, that the last podcast that we had. And this is entitled The Great Guitar Sell Off Has Already Started. And I want to talk about that. What do I mean by that? The thing in the oh, hold on real quick. Scott says, interesting. I always thought the analytical part was the wire composition and the number of the magnet used. Well, now I know. Yeah, yeah, it's real simple. And the Japanese, they made some of the finest ceramic pickups out there. I've played quite a few guitars, and I like it. It doesn't. I can go either way, actually, to tell you the truth. But to tell you the truth, my favorite is Anaco 3 pickups. They're the lowest amount of cobalt in those pickups, so the pull on the strings is not as strong as you would get with with twos, threes, or even ceramics. Um, and it creates a beautiful tone. But that's just after years of just farting around. One of the things that I said in the last live stream was, you know, talking about in terms of vintage guitars was where the future of that market is going. I've hit upon that before. I kind of touched upon it in one live stream, one podcast a while back. But tonight I'd like to hit it at a different angle because I was two things came up. Two things came up. The first thing that came up was that Christie's auction and how that Gilmore Black Strat, went for 15 million dollars or so, give or take. It's just change, and that to me, as I said, everybody was saying, "Oh, it's so cool," it's so interesting that, and as Scott points out, well, that's just going to be somebody's wall art. And the other thing that I thought to myself, well, we're really starting to see two guitar markets. We're really starting to see a divergence in the guitar market. There's two distinct markets, and me, I'm always suspicious of things because nothing, things don't happen in a vacuum. Um, I wonder if this divergence is on purpose. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Cat's Music Journey says, then I'd suggest you try the Fender Yosemite Strat pickups. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about those pickups. Um, I've heard nothing bad about those pickups. And as a matter of fact, if I were to go see the thing about the Affinity, it's my strat. It's your five switch, three singles, the kind of thing. And so the Yosemites are definitely interesting. You should mention first on my list if I ever do upgrade. But you can't argue with free pickups, and Fern is willing to put them in. That's why I'm not pushing him on him finishing up that guitar. He's got to finish it up for me too. I put all the appointments on it. I tightened it up as best to my skills would allow, but it needs that finished professional touch to make it, what it should be. So I'm not pushing them on it, but boy, I wish you guys could see it. It is a beautiful paint job. Came out wonderful. It's the best paint job that I've done on a guitar. Took 3, 4 days, but it was worth it. Um, but anyway, I digress. Let's talk about something that's really happening in the guitar world right now, I think. And honestly, I don't hear very many people talking about this. Um, but if you look at it again, like I said, a little with a jaded eye, as I tend to do things, then you'll see it just about everywhere. Denzel Washington now on the internet. Hey, welcome, Hank. Welcome. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I find Denzel to be a wonderful man, a fantastic actor, and that's about the best compliment that I can give anybody in that field because it's usually one or the other. But in his case, it's both. And good looking guy, too. Holding up well in his 70s. Ionical 3. Yep, Ionical 3 is my go-to. The BBT legit in the house. Hello, sir. The $500 guitar is now the $1,000 guitar, and the $1,000 guitar is now the $2,000 guitar. Yeah, no inflation. And boy, I promised I wouldn't get into the things that are occurring in the world out there, but I want you guys to consider any items that are made from the petroleum byproducts, like guitars, like paints on guitars, like a lot of things on guitars. And if you think that the prices of things are going up now, if you think you're lonely now, just wait. Oh, hello. Hard to beat a free set of pickups. Yeah, man. Like I said, he was pulling them out of this one cat's guitar, putting in a set of Lollers, and the guy said he didn't want them. I said, I'll take them. I'll take them. See how they. That's certainly it'll be an interesting step. I don't know how they'll pair very well with those 500K pots though. Remember the pots are, anyway. Collections are going up for sale. That Christie's auction really was the first thing. The second thing I didn't mention was a YouTube video I saw on this channel's friend, Brad the Guitologist. Um, he's been a long friend of this channel, and I of his. And he put up a video showing a guy who's letting his amp collection go. That I found very interesting. So you see these rare guitars hitting the market. You see vintage amps are showing up in bulk. And you see people usually saying, well, it's time to let my collection go. It's time to weed out the patch, so to speak. But this one guy said something very interesting down in the comments section of Brad's video that I recommend you go to and take a look at. That really struck me. It said, amazing collection. But the problem is, there are guys like this all over the country, and they're all thinking the same thing: time to sell. Sell. And that's a heavy thought. That's a heavy thought because the implications of that and the down, what do they call it, down trail, or yeah, down trail, of where this leads to is interesting. So let's talk about that tonight, because if that's true, we might be entering into something that the guitar world has really never ever experienced before. There is a bill that is due, and it must be paid. And I'm calling it the Great Guitar Sell-Off. The Great Guitar Sell-Off. Hans Muter said, "In that case, I'll take the cheap Harley Benton, yeah, instead of the Gibson." Yeah, um, I am convinced that with the right setup, with a good luthier, even yourself, like I said, you can. I've gotten to the point where I can maintain it. But just like your car, you need to put it in the shop at least once a year to get the oil changed. It's the same thing with your guitar. I can maintain it much better actually than I could even 5 years ago. I actually have the tools now to do those things, and a little bit, a couple of hours in, or more than a few hours in on doing that kind of thing. But you need to take it into a guy like Fern, and you could take a Harley Benton I have down to Fern, and he will set it up, and it will be the best guitar that it can be. And I think at the end of the day, that's good enough. You know, I also saw a story. Okay, maybe it was in that video, maybe not. But a guy was saying that he wanted to go down and buy a vintage Earl line guitar from a guy, and when he met with the guy to buy it, he said, "Excuse me, I hope I'm not being impolite, but I was wondering if you could tell me why the price on this is so low." And the seller said something, very interesting along the lines of what the guy in the comment section of Brad's video said. He said, "No offense, but most of the guys your age are selling, and you're the only person that even called about it." This is a true story. Most of the guys your age are selling. The guy, he says that he was flabbergasted. But he said he thought about it. It's true. He said most of his friends, the guy he's in, this guy's in his 70s, they're selling. By the way, they're the only ones that there ain't nobody else buying. You didn't notice the phone wasn't ringing off the hook for Gen Zs or Gen X or whatever. No, no. And I found that story, those two, you know, comments to be fascinating because again, there's the headline and then there's the truth. And I think we're experiencing a little bit of that. We're seeing the reality of that in a lot of ways. But think about that for a second. That's not a comment about the guitar. It's a damn nice vintage guitar, but that's a comment about the demographics of the guitar culture. Tonight's discussion is going to be about demographics. Again, something that I don't think a lot of people talk about because that's where I think things start to get really interesting. The BBT legit says amps are going the way of the dinosaur. They're heavy, and with digital modeling out and places now want more quieter stages. Yes, yes. Here in the clubs in the Netherlands, you can still bring your amps, and the sound guy will still mic them up. However, they would prefer a modeling sound. However, as I pointed out, I heard one guys that were playing through modelers, another guys who right after them who were playing through amps, and I could tell the difference. I found the Achilles heel of modelers is their mid range, but pronounced mid range. But it's not anything that anybody who wasn't looking for, in other words, the common person in the crowd would give a shit about. So there is that. Um, I don't know about the truth, but those are all salient points. BBT legit, I agree with you. Those are all the points I'm going to talk about those tonight. Mike, Mara, how you doing? Collections being sold off from older players hope that the discounted gear will end up in good younger players' hands. Man, you are like the Yoda of the comment section tonight. You can see the future. That's where I'm going. I'm going to get there. I'm going to talk about that too. Both of those points, actually, gentlemen, I'm going to talk about. Younger players don't want amps. Yeah. Cheers, Guitar Crew. Well, cheers to you, sir. Welcome. Um, the vintage guitar market didn't appear out of anywhere. We've been through the history of that. It was built by a very specific generation of players, by a very specific generation of guys. How old is Norm Harris? Look at Norm Harris. He is the median age of that generation, and he is in his 70s. Guys who grew up in the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s, the Hendrix generation, the Page generation, the Clapton generation, I'll even go up to the Van Halen generation. Those players became collectors. And they bought the guitars they couldn't afford, essentially, in my opinion, when they were young. That has always been the modus operandi, I think, of the vintage market. I've said that before. I'll say it again. Um, it's it's that thing I want to, the nostalgia factor. And they bought those pre-CVS Fenders, and they bought old Marshalls, and they bought old, pedals, and et cetera, et cetera. Burst, when when they were somewhat affordable, you get a 1959 Burst and 1972 for about $1,200. Somewhere 12, and then they got up to around 2000, and then they just took off from there. But that generation now is 60, 70, and 80 years old. I'm turning 59 in June, so I'm just at the cusp of that. I'll be at the lower end of that median. But as a matter of fact, I'm just right before it, not quite in that generation. Guys like my brother, I guess. And at some point, these collections that these guys in that generation, because they're in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, they're going to get sold. That was the point of that Christie's auction anyway. The guy died. and the family is like, we rather have the money. We don't care about these guitars. It's not like they said, well, let's keep that one. No, it's like, yeah, let's see what we get out of this. And sometimes, like I said, it can occur voluntarily, mostly by families when when you're pushing up daisies, and estate sales also as well. And of course, this raises one simple question: Who buys all this stuff? Who buys all this stuff? Because as we've pointed out, has been discussed here in the chat, it's not the younger guys. Not at all. By the way, guys, I'm testing out the mic here. As you can see tonight, I'm not using the wireless. Please let me know how the volume is tonight. I put a filter on this to try to get rid of some of that echo. I hope it sounds better. Let me know. That'd be appreciated. I should have said that in the beginning. Mike says the most enthused vintage guitar players are young dudes in their 20s, at least in my circle. I'm an old cat myself, 63. That makes me a tail end boomer. Yeah, 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 yep, that's right. I wonder if the resurgence of vinyl collection led to young people connecting to older generation with similar interests. Maybe, maybe. I mean, the older generations would be the ones that would have the knowledge of where to guide you. But because when thousands of collectors start selling gear, there has to be new generations of buyers for this. But are they really there? That's the question. Because if you look at the comment sections today, you start to see that actually something else is happening. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Ellie, my cat. She's on the room tonight. Don't know why. Um, so yeah, there's that. Mike's perfect. Good. All right. So we got it dialed in. I will keep it like this. Um, and I will, like I said, I've redone my studio here. So I need to put some art on this wall because this wall was not exposed before. I've completely turned the angle. So we're working on it. Maybe I'll put up a green screen back here, and maybe I'll have the Enterprise, swooping past my head every 15 seconds or something. I'm sorry, wrong kind of channel. So basically, the amps will be selling dirt cheap. Well, let's see, because in the era of accurate profilers and modelers, really, honestly, the demand for solid state or tube amps has drastically declined. Drastically declined. And we just have to be honest about that. Even I used my 1x12 2 amp for 1x12 2 amps for a long time. Long time. Got up to a 2x12 at one point. But I really like my pedal board with the analog pedals running through a digital modeler. That mid in that I think gets sucked out of just using a modeler alone is put back in there by the analog pedals. Maybe it's pixie dust. Maybe I what I need to do is run it through um, a sound test and see if there's a difference with the modeler running by itself or with the pedals. I have to think about that. That would be an interesting one. Point is that I'm quite satisfied, and I can't see myself going back to amps. I really can't. As a matter of fact, I've taken my good, as you saw, Celestian Greenback. I'll never get rid of that speaker because those speakers are good speakers, especially that one's been really put back into its original shape. But the amp itself is no longer necessary because I really like the modelers, and my modeler is extremely cheap. Pocket Master. Entire albums now are recorded with neural DSPs, Kemper, Fractal, Tonex. A lot of these albums are being produced now with these items, and no amps, no cabinets, no microphones. So that $5,000 that you spent on that Royer may not have been the most keen investment when now I have, it basically sampled in my Tonex. I mean, in my Pocket Master. I had the Tonex too, by the way. I like the Pocket Master better. Just a computer to capture, even in the bigger studios. They're no longer capturing the tape; they're capturing the computer, and away you go to the races. BBT legit. So basic. I think that with the invention of amp capture and some of these maulers, why keep heavy amps around when you can capture it just in your mouth? Yeah, I agree. And the microphones, as I was pointing out as well, the microphones as well. A lot of for this generation of players, they're being trained on this, so that's going to be normal. Yes, sweetie, you want to go out? Why don't you go out? Guys, excuse me one second. Come on, out. Go. All right, I am back. Um, you know, I think that's the point of that. I think that really it doesn't make sense. And when you're in a small apartment or confined space, or even when you're, jamming with your friends, you can control the volume a lot better. There's a lot more control you have. And that's going to be the norm. And once you're trained on something, that's it. They're not dreaming about owning a 68 Plexi. They're not. They're not. They, they may, it may be just a patch of several hundred that they have on their modeler. Yeah, this is a 68 Plexi. Let me see how this sounds. You know, it's an interesting thing. You know, they're dreaming about the best headphone tone that they can get at 2 a.m. Me too. I record my albums at night because the nighttime has a different vibe and energy to it. I could never ever record an album during the day that I thought was any good, or a record, single, or whatever. But in order to do that, in when I transferred, I could do it in Singapore because I had a huge house and I get away with it in a dedicated studio. But here in this studio, much smaller, uh, it was headphones, and that's the truth of it. So you know, I I'm glad I recorded the tracks that I did in Singapore because the other half of the tracks were done um, direct with no amp, with maybe a few, maybe with you, we were made for each other on the last album that was recorded using the amp here. That was the day I was just like, screw it, I got to do it this way in order to get the sound I want. But most of it, nowadays going forward is really going to be direct. And anyone buying amps today might end up with dead stock equipment, is one sentiment out there, obviously shared by a lot of people. Dead stock equipment, you know, Maddie will tell you about that. Mike says the high-end boutique amp biz is creating hard right now as we speak, and the market for them is not coming back. That is correct. You can talk about, oh, the Dumble has such great tone. And again, I'm going to talk about the guys who collect Dumbles, the Joe Bonamasses. We're going to get into that because, again, like I said, this market is diverging into two separate markets for two separate classes of people. And one of them ain't going to be great. And the other one, it's a big club and you ain't in it. But I get ahead of myself. I don't know if that's completely true, if it is going to end up being dead stock, but I understand what that means and the implications. That is an implication, so I can't dismiss it. For decades, guitar culture has revolved around amps. End of story, essentially. And the Marshall stacks, twin reverbs, Dumbles, things like that. Players today really don't care. They're happy running straight into a computer. The Pocket Master acts as an interface. I tried it out on a track I was working on a few weeks ago, and I was able to plug the Pocket Master with my pedals running through it. By the way, it's at the end of the chain directly into my computer, and it recorded lovely. One of the best tones actually that I've gotten. And again, I grew up in the generation that knows about the amps, and I know the power and the beauty of those, but the convenience, utility, and the functionality and the options that the modelers provide far outweigh that midsection, that may or may not be missing with them that you would get in the amps. And that changes the economics of gear in a big way. It really does. At the very top of the market, however, this so that's this side of the market. Let's call that market B. The A market. By the way, That's us. B is for us boys. That's us. The A market, and you can figure out what that stands for. No, I'm just kidding. The A market is where things get really strange because at the same time of all of this happening in the B market, something is happening at the very top end of the guitar world, and that's these auctions, huge ones. The what was his name? Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay, yeah, was his name. I don't follow sports, so you forgive me if I pronounce his name incorrectly, if I or misspoke his name. I do believe it's Jim Irsay guitar collection. Um, that went to Christie's, yeah, and the results of that were really insane. And I think, what was it? We'll look it up over here. Had that up. Yeah, so it was $95 million in sales on that collection. Historic guitars selling at astronomical numbers. And these things are selling now like fine art. This is the prices that the museums would pay for a small or lesser known Rembrandt. And these are investment pieces, and they have elevated themselves into cultural artifacts. And I think that encapsulates something that should tell you something very important about the A market. I ordered a Tonex One. That's a great one, Hans. I own that one. As a matter of fact, I do believe I even reviewed it while I had it. Tonex One is good. I just for the amount of functions I find, the Pocket Master kind of beats it, but it's a better. I guess the output is, I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but I think it's a great pedal too. Didn't Prince's Cloud guitar sell for $15 million? No, BBG legit. His guitar went for $6 million. It was there's four that I know of. There's the white one, there's the yellow one, there is the blue one, sky blue one, and there is of course a purple one. It was the yellow one, the mustard colored one that sold. I do believe that one was the Sign of the Times guitar that he played. I may be wrong about it, but I seem to recall that was the Sign of the Times guitar. 6 million. Now these are two completely different markets, kids. On on any kind of thought level, you can see that market number one, market A, as we call it, these are historic instruments that are tied to legendary artists. Okay. And these are basically rock and roll artifacts, this is like, you know, cultural iconic kind of stuff. Culturally iconic kind of stuff. They're not really guitars anymore. They are now history. In the violin market, Stradivarius violins, when they become available, are, I'm just throwing this out there, with my jaded eye, I look at things, and one of the things I do, I will note that with a Stradivarius, on the other hand, those are not kept in museums. Those are owned by players who play them with top orchestras, in the top concert halls. That violin has been played in some of those for centuries. Uh, the guitars, the electric guitars, they're museum pieces now. They're not being played, and that's a shame. But that's category A. That's what happens to guitars in category A. In our market B, here, the club you are in. Regular vintage gear, old Strats, old Les Pauls, vintage amps, old boutique pedals, the kind of gear sitting in basements all across this great land. Studios, collections, all across your country and mine. And that market depends on something different, something simple to drive it. Let me catch up here in the chat. You signed the Times correct. Yeah, I thought so. Jim Irsay. Oh, I said that right. Jim Irsay. I believe that's how you say that. Guitar collection, as well as NFL team owner of the Indy Colts franchise. He turned down 100 million from a rich Saudi prince about 10 years ago. Well, it ended up being worth about what that Saudi prince was offering for him, 93 million. That's pretty close. 10 years ago. Wow. Tom On's website is a rabbit hole. I think this is the discount section Hans mentioned. Yeah. Um, be frank with you guys. When I go on Tomon's website, the first place that I look is their B stock. If I'm looking for something, I always go to the B stock first to see if they have it. Because quite frankly, I find their B stock to be not so bad. I've never had a problem with a B stock item from Tomon. You gotta have players who want this gear. You have to have players who want this gear in the B market. In the A market, those are historical cultural items. In the B market, and by the way, that's a very, very, very small sliver of the market. But boy, look at the money that it's generating. Isn't that interesting? Guitar culture has changed. In the past, the gear was the dream. Again, like I said, we we pontificate, grossly over uh, the rigs, uh, what kind of strings was Pagey using, the mythology. We talked about mythology, all these things that we've been discussing for the last few weeks. But today, tone is often software driven, less likely tied to a physical instrument, so to speak. And a lot of young players are simply just not interested in owning huge collections either. Where are they going to put, a 30 or 40, guitar collection? And a lot of these young cats can't find an affordable house, especially here in Amsterdam. You're going to live in a shoebox. You better, you know, learn how to sleep on top of them because they're going to be your bed and your furniture. Um, a lot of young people are just not interested. They're just not interested in it. And this is worth taking note of. If thousands of older collections are going up for sale, older guys are selling their gear, and fewer younger guys are interested in it, there is a percentage. But again, like I said, even in the B market, the percentage of younger guys who are interested in that older gear is just as slim as the margin is of the total of the A market, maybe even less. Because in that comment that stuck out to me where the guy said, hey, I had to lower the price because the phone wasn't ringing off the hook. What happens to the market? Does it hold? Does it soften? Do prices drop? Like that guy came to the conclusion, he dropped his price and boy, he hooked a fish. So that's an indicator there. That's something that I put in the file. This guy knew that his audience was mostly sellers, so he dropped it down to a price that he could at least hook one of them. And by the way, the guy who bought it was older, as I pointed out, and eventually it's gonna go back up for sale. And who's gonna buy it from him if all his buddies are selling? Nobody really knows what's going to happen. But the signs, in my opinion, are starting to appear. One of the purposes of this podcast, one of the things that I like to do is say, look at things from 30,000 feet. In other words, we get into our myopia. Myopia is looking at something through a very small lens when it comes to certain issues of just what we see around us. But if you take a bigger view of it, a bigger picture of it, starts to tell a very interesting story. And, you know, okay, so like Joe Bonamassa, let's adjust that because I forgot to mention that. Someone made a joke once about how many amps is Joe Bonamassa going to buy, which is a very humorous way of saying something very serious. Um, there are only so many high end collectors in the world. And when the supply increases faster than the demand, then markets change. You know, I think with some of his stage played guitars, that Joe Bonamassa again is going to find a lot of his stuff over there and the amps as well in the A category one of these years. But I think there's another aspect of his collection that is going to greatly depreciate before he gets to that A section. Matter of fact, when he gets to that A section, he's going to pray that he does well because the other stuff that he has a huge collection he has like 10, twin reverbs, he has like 20 of everything, you know? And I think the market on that stuff is going to drop before he gets a chance to sell it. Again, like I said, he's part of that A crowd, so he can make up his money over there, and I think he's aware of that. However, the rest of the stuff, I don't know. There are only so many high-end, collectors in the world, and again, markets change. It sounded like a great plan back then, but the world changes. We're seeing that. The world changes. Boy, howdy. The good news, I think, and we touched upon it here in the chat earlier, is that if the supply increases, the demand is not there, then the value on that supply is going to decrease. And there may come a day where young players will be able to get a 72 Strat for very little because that market blew out. I know this to be true because all of the hardware, studio hardware that I spent so much money on back in the 80s and the 90s when I was recording and all that stuff, when software came out, it people were giving it away. They were using, as with the exception of some of the really nice stuff, but a lot of the Behringer stuff, a lot of the Digi, this, that, or the other, a lot of that stuff, really was paperweights. So you could see that with. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but the possibility of it happening is really there. It is not out of the realm of a possibility, and that's a good thing. Because again, with that, younger players may get a chance to experience what a vintage guitar is like, and some of them may take to it and become famous with it and do a resurgence in that market that it's going to need. But that's going to be a while. We're on the downside of this. We're not on the upside of this yet. Some incredible instruments actually might have a chance to actually get played as opposed to sitting in a vault or in a case or hanging on a wall somewhere. And that's actually a beautiful kind of outcome from where this can go. How many guitars and amps do you think Joe owns? Well, you can do kind of a. He has two museums. One is in Nashville. One is in L.A. Um, he calls museums basically places that he keeps stores his stuff at. Security, the whole nine. Understand he has a top Israeli guy that does security for him. But you can go on YouTube and watch the videos, live from Joe's house or whatever, and take a look at what he's got. And it's in the hundreds, in the hundreds. He learned from his dad and from hanging out, with just the folks he hangs around with in that category. So they're hoarders. Joe Bonamassa has way too many amps. I saw him in front of a wall of them in his LA house on YouTube recently. That's the video I'm talking about. And I'm afraid he has overbalanced his collection with amplifiers under an outdated thinking that there is going to be a market for those when there is not. Especially when he gets into his, I don't know how old he is. I assume he's in his 50s. Some of us, don't age too well, but assume he's in his 50s, early 50s. But not a slight at the way he looks. I'm just saying I can't tell. But it behooves me. He's got at least another 20 years before that retirement comes up, at least, because the average age of the guys who were putting their stuff up for auction were in their 70s. Wait till the Paul McCartney collection comes up. So I don't know. I think his overweightness on amps is a liability from my viewpoint, because I don't know who's going to sell those to. Is the Tech 21 brand pedals any good? The Tech 21 New York brand is the quintessential ass kicking pedals of all time. I'm looking for a Tech 21 pedal when I go to Japan. I want to add it to my pedal board. It's one pedal I want to add. I'm not going to say what it is. I'll put it this way. It is the Tech 21 pedals are the pedals that the Joyo pedals were based on. They were based on the Tech 21 pedals. The Tech 21, and by the way, that shows you it was such a good circuit that the Joyo pedals sound great, like the California sound. But the Tech 21 pedals, the original ones, they sound better. I will use that. You know how I am reluctant to use that, but they sound better. You know, but you wouldn't go wrong getting the Joyo as a substitute. But it's just one of those things. So yeah, I can recommend those. Those are great pedals. At the end of the day, guys, the real magic of guitars is never really the object. It wasn't the guitar. He was the player. The guitar gets associated with a player visually because when we see photos or video of that player, if it exists, then there's an association in our minds with the guitar and the player. However, Hendrix played new guitars. He didn't play vintage guitars. When he was recording those, I pointed it out before. I pointed it out again. When he was recording those albums, those were new Fenders. And Jeff Beck as well, that I can remember. The mythology, of course, came later. But what made these instruments legendary were the players. Joe probably doesn't care his collection is worth. It seems more of an addiction. Oh, I didn't want to even mention that, but a very good point, Mr. Watson. It is an addiction. It's an addiction. It's a hoard. That's why I used the word hoarding. I was not using that lightly. It's hoarding in a certain way, and the hoarding and the connotations that come with that, I think, are applicable his case. He says, "Oh, it's my money. It's where I want to put in." This is true. It's true. Don't piss on another man's parade. However, we can stand back and objectively say that there is a disturbing amount of amps. The thing is, Joe Bonamosa's music is overshadowed by his gear collection. Wow. Wow. Mind blown. Dime Store Liam blew my mind with that, because that would be the counter to Hendrix being associated with the Strat, but it was Hendrix the player, whereas in Joe's case it's his collection and not Joe the player. This is a complete obverse of that. Wow. Is overshadowed by his gear collection, rightly so, in my view. I never heard him play a single phrase that didn't strike me as somewhat derivative and generic. You know, there is a crowd for Joe Bonamassa music, and it is of a certain age group, unless they were drugged there by that age group, that digs that, what I call, soft blues, or what is that music they used to call it, like the soft wave, or the gentle wave. It's like it's gentle blues. It's neither here nor there. It's lukewarm. It's lukewarm, because even Led Zeppelin, when they did their version of the blues, they put some extra on it. They put their foot into it. And Joe's not that kind of guy. Joe's just not that kind of guy. But yeah, he's more known for his gear than he is actually for his albums. I can't name one Joe Bonamassa song. You could say the same thing about me, however, I'm not Joe Bonamassa. Let's see here. And this is the thing, it's not the actual instrument you own, it's what it makes you do. There are a lot of times these people spend with their instruments that nobody really talks about. It's practice. We did talk about that. Good that you were reiterate that. We mentioned that about having, that was the point of this live stream of podcast discussion, was that one instrument played by that one guy for many, 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 many hours, sleeping with it, sleeping with it. Have you slept with you? How many of you guys, raise your hand, and went to sleep with your guitar when you were a teenager? I did. Um, I was going to make a crude joke there, but I'm actually trying to make a salient point, so let me not destroy it with my carnal side. But honestly, you develop a relationship with that instrument. That's the truth of it. Sorry guys, my mic's in the way of me reading the comments here. I always feel extremely fortunate that I never liked Les Pauls or Strats. One Night Only, the guitars featuring Joe Bonamassa. Yeah. Joe plays Lord blues, in my opinion. Yeah, I guess that's a fair thing to say. It's a soulless blues. Now he's played with the greats. He's played with all these, and he knows them. They know him. Again, that's that crowd. They roll like that. Even though he says he doesn't, but he does. You should know them by their fruits. However, that being said, it's a very bland, soulless kind of playing to me. It's not a criticism of his work, because a lot of people enjoy it. He sells out concerts all over the world. But, you know, some people like hot sauce, some people like ketchup. It's just one of those things. Yeah, Mike, people 10 years younger than us who wish they were 10 years older than us. Does anyone ever know the name of one of Joe's songs. Yeah, I don't. Does anyone know the name of Joe Bonamassa song? I don't. I can't name a song. I can't name one. I can't name an album. I can tell you some of his gear that he has. So what is that? As you know, as Liam was pointing out there, what does that mean? What does that tell you? Never guilty. Cass knows. I only heard of Joe because of his gear. Don't know one song is. Yeah, that's the general consensus out there. That's wild, man. That's the opposite of Jimi Hendrix. We know the songs, and we know the instrument. In his case, we just know the instrument. We don't know the song. That's wild. That, like I said, that blows my mind. It's the music that makes the instruments legendary. So in that regard, okay, this is Joe Bonamassa's, burst, and we're putting it up for auction. Was it connected to a song that people can really groove, like David Gilmour, or Prince or Kurt Cobain? Okay, I sound like I'm Joe bashing, and I don't want to do that. I'm just saying, I'm purely looking at it from an investment standpoint, and these are valid questions that you could ask as an investor. Joe does an awesome version of "I Just Got Paid." Okay, I'll check that out. I'm not opposed to listening. Like I said, I have, and don't, by the way, I have listened to some of Joe's songs, but my thing is that I said to myself that after I was done, that was really well recorded, very tightly performed, great musicians, but it was missing something. Didn't have the kind of spice that I like. Speaking of hot sauce, I ordered the bomb hot ones, half excited, half scared. Be careful with that, gas, because then you will burn out your liver and your esophagus at the same time. I know that one. I came from Southeast Asia, guys. I've had some stuff that makes ghost peppers, get scared. I made a mistake in a Thai restaurant once out by a riverside, authentic Thai food, of just chopping into a pepper, small thing, but it's harmless, couldn't harm me. Man, about 10 coconut shakes later, because they had these coconut shakes that you drink, really cold iced with coconut milk. I downed 10 of those bad boys, man. My eyes were watering. Girl I was with, she was just cracking up. She was just dying. She thought that was so funny. I don't mess with that stuff. I learned my lesson living in Asia. Your musical technique doesn't matter if you have no creativity or originality. I agree with that as well. You get to the point where you've studied and you've played so many other people's songs that your songs are just little bits and pieces of those. It's one of the reasons why I did the whole, top 40 band thing. I did that professionally in Japan for for years, but I never let any of those songs influence the stuff that I wanted to write. A song like "Love Letter," for example, there's nobody out there who has it. It's a quirky, weird song, of mine. But you can't point to anybody and say that sounds like that. Or it's something on its own. I didn't let those things influence me because I really was conscious of that. I have Prince to thank for that, because Prince was like, "Why am I going to cover somebody else's song? You didn't have to." I did for a while, but I didn't let it stick. So I guess in the end, guys, maybe the question isn't who will buy all those vintage guitars. Really, the real question is who will make great music with them potentially in the future if the prices drop, if the bottom falls out. Because eventually every guitar leaves a collection. And it depends upon whether it goes, which market it goes in. And the only thing that matters is what happens next with it. The only thing that really matters is what happens next. Joe's shows are kind of like a blues revival more so than his own material. Yeah, that's the impression that I got. He covers, blues standards, and I love the blues. I come from a blues tradition. I come from, a lot of musical traditions, actually, as it turns out. But uh, that is one color and a palette of colors that I like to draw from. And 24/7 blues, it's just not my thing, man. It never was. I got rock and roll in my heart. And to tell you the truth, sound of electric guitar, pushing an amp, or a decent muffler in this case, is something that I find extremely pleasurable. When I sit back and hear the playback on a tune, whether it's mine or somebody else's, and it's got a driving rock sound to it and a good bass line, and the drums are hitting, on the one, that stirs me. The thrill is gone. I can only listen to that song so many times. And don't even get me started on, the Delta blues, because I enjoy those old recordings to a point as well. However, and I understand that those are the foundations of the rock and roll that I do love. And that's one of the reasons I recognize it. It's one of the reasons I know about the blues, because you got to know where you came from if you want to know where you're going. That aside, it is not the end all to be all. So that's just my thoughts on it, 2 cents. I saw JB once before he got famous. Ticket was 20 euros. Now it's 200. Dig that, man. Totally agree. I couldn't go to a show and listen to 2 hours of blues. I can't do it. I can't, I can't, I couldn't do it. You know, Jimi Hendrix would slip in a blues song every now and then, just to throw it in there and say, hey, check this out, and then he'd get back to, to the regular show. But there is that. Mike, when we were born, Dime Store Liam says the charts were integrated. That's right. The radio was integrated. R&B and rock and roll together. That's the world that I grew up in, and a lot of crossover groups that had R&B and rock fusion to them were big at that time. I could get into that. Yeah. It marketed all of us. I hear in your music the same way I hear it in mine. That's why we look for. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It's true. The product. Thank you. That is such a love. I don't have to remember that, because that's a great way of putting it. The output of my music is a result of a open radio system that I was exposed to as a child. As a child, when I turn on the radio, you heard a wide range of stuff. You heard Stevie Wonder, then you heard Zeppelin, then you heard, this, that, and the other. And this continued up until through the 80s. MTV eventually, when the color line broke on that, you began to see it. Then BET came on, and you could watch BET or you could watch MTV, watch them both. You got a little bit of everything. You were watching David Bowie sing Let's Dance, and then you were watching, the Mary Jane Girls singing All Night Long. All these things occurred at the same time. And all these different, in the blues as well, you heard, people get ready with, you know, with different versions of that. I did Rod Stewart's version, and then somebody, I'm trying to think of the other person. You got to have a wide spectrum. And I just think that I'm a product of that. That's why my music is all over the place. track one, Funky Good Time, that's old school, you know, funk fusion rock and roll. And then Belly Dancer, that's it's just it's 90s radio. It's just a mixture. If you didn't grow up with country blues, it probably sounds weird. Lightning, yeah, Big Mama Thornton, yeah. You know, you grew up with it because you heard it at some point, especially if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, you heard it at some point. And it became something you filed away in the back of your head, but it wasn't an end all to be all. It was a great time to grow up. Yeah, it was a fantastic time because you weren't being funneled into these ever, smaller, compartments. And by the way, the dark side of that, group A and group B thing is this, and I think you see it, is that, you know, there's the money, the real money is in the group A side. There's the money on the B side is on the downside, on the decrease, which means that the poverty of musicians, the everyday guy, is going to increase. That's another funnel, guys. It's hidden. You wouldn't see it. It's like the Where's Waldo of, screwing with us. But that is also, if you game it out, as I try to do, that is a reasonable outcome of that as well. The rich will get richer. 15 million, 20 million. There'll be a 20 million guitar set one of these days. Somebody like Paul McCartney's bass or something like that. You never know. 20, money laundering at this point, kids. That's a whole different thing. And if you don't understand how money laundering works in the art world, it has now reached out to the guitar world for sure. But I digress. The B side is where poverty you shall dwell. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think here in the comment section or down below in the comment section. Yeah, it was a great time to grow up. I think about it quite often. Quite often. Well, guys, I have another tough week ahead of me of work. Not gonna lie, I'm not looking forward to it, but we live on. We work hard, and we do our best. And it was good to take an hour or so here tonight to shift my mind away from those thoughts to these thoughts. It really is a pleasure. It's a mental exercise for me, guys. To tell you the truth. Sometimes I'm working some of these things out on the fly, and some of the things that you say, a lot of the things you say, really bring clarity to it too. So I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to always show up and watch these podcasts, listen to them, and have yourself a good week, guys. God bless each and every one of you. God bless us all and keep us, especially these days. You guys take care. Bye bye.